Alright, let's talk about monsters. You're hiding in the basement of your friend's house. You're playing a game of hide and seek. It's just the two of you, and you hear a set of footsteps that you recognize are not theirs. Curious, you go to investigate, quietly, so as to not be seen by your friend or by whatever the thing is. Before you reach either, however, you hear a scream and a snap. And now you're all too aware of yourself, the way that you're breathing, the creaks on the floor, the fact that you really should get back to hiding, because you still don't know what's out there. You really hope you're better at hide and seek than they are. Alright guys, let's talk about monsters. You've just been assigned a brand new therapist. They're a little withered, but their eyes are kind as they ask you to take a seat, saying, "Now please start from the beginning." And you do. And as you do, you feel a particular lightness sort of take over. It's not a dissociation per se, simply that normally the pain that you feel during your recounting of any events isn't there. At the end of the session, you remark this to your specialist, and they grin in such a way that you notice that the wrinkles that they used to have were gone. Their eyes are a light a little bit deeper and darker in their color, expressions more nuanced and pronounced. They laugh a little too knowingly and ask you if you know anything about dragons. You say they hoard gold for power, and they tisk. They lean in and tell you can hoard just about anything if you're clever enough. Let's talk about monsters. You're the curator of an oddity museum, and your most recent exhibit is supposed to be about myths of the undead. You go through all the numbered boxes and crates to make sure that everything made it, when you discover a parcel that's not on your registry. It's old and quite large, and upon opening the crate out of sheer curiosity, you discover a coffin. It must be a part of the exhibit. I mean, why else would they send it? It is about the undead. So you make a few notes on your register about the quality of condition, the markings that are etched into the sides. It's near the end of your shift and you're about to lock up, but you have to do something first. You go to open the lid, and a hand reaches out and grabs your own before you can even scream, tipping the lid off themselves as they go to sit up. In a warbled tone, you ask what they are. They look to the inside of the lid, the words "help me" scratched into their surface. You should be asking who. Guys, let's talk about monsters. There once was an immortal named Mrs. Black, who walked through reality and stepped through its cracks. And while everyone's dying, she's just trying to sort triumph and tragedy through facts. She's an observer that only those who are looking can see. And no events, no matter how great or devastating, can even touch her. To the point where if someone were to wish for time to reverse, she would watch the people rewind. She tends to dress in greens, blacks, and golds, with rose copper hair that glitters in the sun. She's watched cities burn, towers rebuild themselves, magic and creation and destruction, time and time again. And if it were not for her, this realm would have no story keeper. No mist of knowledge on the tongues of babes. No hint to wonder what would have been, and has been already. And I love her. Guys, it's Valentine's Day, so let's talk about monsters. So Cupid's got you in a chokehold. They have been trying to set you up all day, and you're just having none of it. Thanks to high school dodgeball, terrible memories, you have successfully dodged every arrow, causing chaos. The old lady across the street is now a cougar. An entire book club is fawning over a furry. And the vampire enthusiast is going after Little Miss Sunshine. Needless to say, Cupid's pissed, hence the chokehold. And it's not until they realize that you're into that they're kind of into that too. Cupid being propositioned? Well, I never. And yet, oddly, they're charmed. After all, it's not often that they're bested on their day. And when you stick their own arrow in their back, they're smitten. Not because it worked on them, but because you're tenacious as hell. Perhaps you met your match after all. Have fun! Guys, let's talk about monsters. You're a camp counselor at an outdoor survival camp. And this is your fourth group of kids that you've taken out. And oddly enough, with every group you've had at least one kid, if not 5, complain about a particular nightmare. It was unnerving when 2 kids had very similar dreams. The first group, slightly more nervous as the second group gives you a little more detail and your own involvement within. By the third group, on your nature walks, you start to notice things that they've mentioned in their dreams. The tree stump that looks suspiciously like a narwhal for one. The gaping maw of sunset drags you into ghost stories with group 4. You don't even have to look at the worried children's faces to know that the first teller's tale is of that very same nightmare. The light of the fire glints the trees in just the wrong way, and you run, unsure of where the narwhal's tip was pointing when you fall.
Guys, let's talk about monsters. You're staring face to face with a mirror. The mirror says hello to you. You say hello to the mirror. The mirror tousles its hair, and you tousle yours because you want to look like the person on the other side of that mirror. Anything not to be like yourself. The mirror says it doesn't like you, and you agree. The mirror leans in to inspect you, and you lean back in because you want to be just your best. Maybe they'll stay longer this time if you're the right kind of perfect. They leave in a huff, and you too, because this is so frustrating. And as they disappear along the sharp blade of the edge, so too do you. What they don't know as you vanish into the darkness, the nothingness in between, is that you get what they've always wanted, just as they get what you've always wanted. The chance to be seen, and the chance to be unseen. How does it feel?
Let's talk about monsters. The wind whirls softly around you, a maze of choices in your midst. As a seer, you understand that every path has its consequence, every riddle its ride, and every denouement a new beginning. The possibilities loop around you like water and spring to life at the touch, forking into rivulets of precise and calculated choice, like blowing ink over paper with a straw. As the events pass, it solidifies, crystallizes into ice, freezing in place through the sheer passage of time. People tell you it must be easy to choose with all the possibilities of outcomes right at your fingertips. They could never be more wrong, because how can you choose when each choice cascades into infinite possibilities right in front of you? How can you not be paralyzed when a single breath can kill you? How can you know which one is the right one? Guys, let's talk about monsters. You're weeding in the garden, and as you dig, you unearth something rather strange. It starts as a singular clover, strange enough on its own since they normally come in groups. But as you dig deeper, what should have just been a simple root actually opens up into a bulb-like shape. You draw your hand back as you feel a bite on your gloved fingertip, and then go to investigate further. You unearth what appears to be a baby mandrake, weeping softly in your hands. You're lucky it's as small as it is, since an adult's cry tends to kill. If it were me, I would probably put it in a planter or replant it somewhere in the wild, but it's not me, it's you. So, what would you do? Give me the goods. Okay guys, let's talk about monsters. Somewhere out there, there is a bus. It's not like any other bus, but it looks like every other bus. Meaning, no matter what city that you're in, if this bus arrives, you'll think it's the bus from that city. The problem is, once enough passengers have boarded, the bus will refuse to stop. Instead, your bus starts going down a different route. One that, when you ask the bus driver where they're taking you, says in a very decayed, airless voice, "The factory." It's only there that you notice the nails through their hands as the bus drives itself, and the nail through the chest to keep that poor lost soul upright. By the time you look through the window again, the city's long gone, rolling hills of dead grass replacing it. And a factory, the human glue factory. Let's talk about monsters. There is a ladybug at your window. Wonderful! Fantastic! Don't they bring good luck? Not this one. This is the Ladybug of Misfortune. The one that when you see, or go to notice, destroys your life. It starts out in small things like, I don't know, like you trip a lot. You trip into your boss. You trip into your crush. You trip into people all the time. You trip down a flight of stairs and end up in the hospital. Or there you have a bad trip on pain medication. You see it, the bane of your existence, the Ladybug of Misfortune. Ladybug of Misfortune. It's swimming in your IV, along with all of its friends. You try to call out, but you start to choke, tripping over your words as ladybugs fall out of your mouth. You should probably get that checked out.
Guys, let's talk about monsters. You're walking in the countryside when you come across a field of flowers blooming in the midday sun. The smell is intoxicating, so you decide to take a stroll. The smattering of blues and violets are so soft at the touch as they graze your knees. And as you slowly reach the center, you notice one flower that is different than all the rest. From tip to root, it is perfectly black. So black, in fact, that it feels almost as though it's seeping its saturation out to the flowers around it, the stark contrast of it heightening the vibrancy of all the other colors. And as you step closer, the sun itself almost seems to tinge the sky green. The clouds make it look almost like key lime pie. The smell swims in your vision, and you gain the intense urge to pluck it. What happens when you do? Let me know. Let's talk about monsters. You're trapped in a literal gold mine. There's been a cave-in of illustrious proportions thanks to corporate greed cutting corners. Your hands brush along cool, rough stone as you try to feel your way out. You call out helplessly to your probably dead crewmates, hands turning slick as it falls off the edge of the last boulder. You careen down to the ground as more ooze drenches your clothes, in what you can only describe as the putrid smell of digesting flesh. It is at this point that you decide it is necessary to strike your only match, to a sight that you would never forget, if only you were here to remember it. Gold flickers off the walls and scales as a bloodied maw opens to greet you.
Let's talk about monsters. I want to know about the one that you used to go to camp with that would always opt out of the swimming option. You've been best friends for years and you used to think that they were just hydrophobic, who one day, on a planned hike, takes you to a lake. This is supposed to be a multi-day hike, so you've got all your gear and decide to set up camp for the night. The sun is just peeking over the horizon when they say, "Hey, do you want to go swimming?" Which is completely not like them, so obviously you say yes. You both get down to your skivvies and you jump in, but they hesitate on the shoreline. But it was their idea. Nervously, they look at you and you try to reassure them that everything's gonna be okay. It's just water. You're gonna be fine. You can't tell if it's blush or the sun that's on their face as they take their first step. But a swathing of orange scales soon consumes them. Their strange eyes look to you for reassurance. What do? Let's talk about monsters. I want to know about the gamer who won't show their face. You've been chatting with each other for the last 6 months, but they still won't even show a picture. Which is totally fine because privacy and everything, but they've decided to make it a game in its own right. If you can guess the real reason why they won't show their face, they'll show their face. You get 1 guess per day. At this point, you've managed to guess everything from simple self-consciousness to horrible disfigurement to being lost on a desert island with no camera at all. Finally, one day, as a joke, you say to him, I bet you don't even have a body. I bet if you tried to show me who you are, it would just be a bloody chair. There's a moment of silence at the other end of the line, and he goes, well, shit. It's not his camera that turns on, but yours. And on your screen, in the corner of the room, there is a shape, waving.
Let's talk about monsters. You've seen how this shit goes. Enough to know that when your friends tell you to separate, to threaten everyone with your baseball bat to get them to stay put. The sound of glass, a broken window, something on the ground. Your friends back behind you as you spread out to cover them. As the thing oozes up the side of an overturned desk in a classroom that you and your friends are not supposed to be in if the moon has anything to tell. The shape begins to take form into that of your dean, and you run. And here you thought college was supposed to be fun. Let's talk about monsters. I want to know about the one you went fishing with. You're the one that's over on the side of the river with the big bucket and the bigger net. Meanwhile, they, giant beast of a bear that they are about thigh height in the water. They like to bend over with their claws and teeth and pick out the fish one by one, throwing them at you with questionable accuracy as you try to catch them like floppy butterflies. The only reason why the two of you have agreed to this arrangement is because you are the one that knows how to make fire. One night they entered your camp, and you, being the pragmatic person that you are, offer them a piece of seasoned, well-cooked fish as a distraction. To your surprise, when they reached you, grabbed you, and hoisted you up, they can speak perfect English. Asking with gruff astonishment, how did you make this taste so good? Not one to refuse a meal ticket. Let's talk about monsters. You walk forward and step through the air like a tidal wave, falling endlessly down. The world shifts into starlight and green grass as the clouds dip themselves with moon. You are a million miles away from the earth and yet hugging it tightly with every breath, drinking in the wrongness of your Alice in Wonderland-esque cascade, shrinking like a violet with violent intent, hammering yourself through the barriers of your own body, mind, and spirit, tasting the air as you become one with it, lost as an atom amongst many, like energy, winding yourself back upwards so to find yourself a place. What an eldritch. Let's talk about monsters. Somewhere out there, there is a tightrope walker, and no matter what this tightrope walker does, they always somehow maintain perfect balance. It's almost uncanny. They glide through the air and shimmer in slow motion as they cartwheel back and forth on that tight line. The crowd oohs and ahs, but the other performers look up with unease. You see, recently, there had been an accident. A near-death experience for the one who walks the wire. Once a standoffish loner. After dying on the table for 3 minutes, they seem to come back a new being. And though many would have a new lease on life, they smile a little too broadly, eyes a little too dead. Let's talk about monsters. Somewhere out there, there is a collector of things, all with one thing in common. Some way or another, one piece of whatever was collected had to at some point have been alive. Whalebone corsets, human teeth rattles, a guitar made of wood, and catgut strings. They play a strange and forlorn tune through the well-worn tips of their sheepskin gloves, dancing along the edge of a fire made from the remains of those they once knew. The ones who helped them create their great collection. The old town burns as they pack up their masterpieces, pluck the embers from the sky, and move on to the next.